Welcome to the Tag Talks podcast. Today I'm joined by Coach Brett Adams. Brett, how you doing, man?
No complaints so far.
There you go. Okay, so why don't you just get us started? Let us know a little bit about you, where you're from, where you're working now, and then a brief history of how you kind of got to where you're at.
I'm always getting better at these as I do. I'm born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm technically now, since I'm 24, and I moved here when I was 6. I'm technically from Texas now. I'm a native Texan. Grew up in this weird Texas football culture. This very stardom young, Pee Wee League-esque. Like everything's very serious. Now we say elite, like everyone's elite, but back then that's exactly how it was without the title or the moniker. If you're not playing on this team, you're not doing this, and it just goes up the ladder because all the guys that you played with in that Pee Wee League, you probably played with in middle school, and you probably played with in high school. And it's kind of the same way now. A lot of the guys that you see guys competing with in college, they knew those were the guys. They're like, yeah, I'm probably going to start training with him. So you start training with him, and you all are in the same league together. And I was an athletic trainer in high school, got a scholarship to junior college because I wanted to start small and really see what it was about and make sure I wanted to do that. So I was like, 2 years isn't going to be that much of a give. And the process was amazing. And especially seeing like the level of talent that was at the junior college that I went to was unreal. It was a very diverse group with a bunch of internationals. So they really shed a different light and a different approach on training and how they maneuvered. So I just really got to soak in a lot of knowledge, especially from the tops that were from America, and then the top internationals that were here. Because some people actually played on the tour. Some people had a rough life and could have been in other places, and so now they're here. So I had a chance to really get mentored by them in a way and understand their process and see how they like to move. And I just took notes, kept my mouth quiet, and asked questions when I felt necessary, and really just enjoyed that process. And now I have my own training company, my own education company. I work with a lot of other companies, not just in athletic training or sports performance, and do a lot of consulting work as far as business and everything like that. What else? Missing anything?
No, that's it, man. It sounds like you got like a kind of a breadth of experience there. And for us, like I said, I'm from Canada, so our world up here is a little differently, but the fact that you got a scholarship for doing athletic training is like mind blowing to us. Like we can hardly even get athletic scholarships in Canada, let alone to be a AT. So that's actually pretty cool. When you were at that junior college, what kind of sports were you working with primarily?
My first year, when you're in the training room, everybody's in there.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I was assigned to soccer my first year, and we were blessed enough to win a national championship. In my second semester, I had tennis, which was very different, because tennis was a sport they gave the trainers that really did need to be observed, if you know what I mean. Like you wouldn't put a trainer you put on for tennis for football because it's a trust thing.
Yeah.
But we had so many knowledgeable trainers. They could just put anybody where they wanted to go. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to do tennis. I don't see it as a downgrade at all. And I made it a hell of an experience. And we were 1 point away from winning a national championship. And my last year we had baseball, and we did win a national championship. So that was fun as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you guys had a lot of success there, and like you said, that was a pretty high level junior college that you were at there. So just some other kind of random questions that I like to ask right at the beginning, just always trying to get some new resources for myself as well as for anyone that listens. So what are any favorite podcasts or books that you find yourself recommending?
Podcast at the moment. I haven't listened. Actually, all up in smoke. It's by I couldn't tell you the creator's name. Actually, I can look it up.
Okay.
But Up in Smoke is a really good one. It's pretty much a culture podcast, and it's really good. They do a lot of sports interviews. It's on YouTube, but and who is it? Stack 5. He's one of the creators of it, co-host of it.
Okay.
And books. Let's see. Last book I read is right here, actually. There's Show Your Work by Austin Keelan. Plato's Republic. Aristotle's The Politics. I'll give one of my gems away. Free Play by Stefan Nakmanovich.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, this is always about, I'm always trying to find new resources and see what other people are diving into in terms of podcast, books, or whatever. And I think it's cool to share with anyone that listens to, just a new way to find some new stuff. So for our last one here, I think in your business, you work with primarily high school kids now?
It's everybody.
A
high
little
school
bit of,
colleagues. Yeah.
A little even mix. Okay, so I guess I'll narrow this one specifically to high school. Just that's the bulk of the athletes that are training with me currently are high school athletes. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you think you see high school athletes making? One or two of the top ones that kind of stick out for you.
Mistakes. I'd say I don't even know if I consider this one a mistake, but it's just they gotta try. Like I don't even consider it a mistake not trying because it's just their reflexive pattern is to just kind of be apprehensive. I think that's just what this generation of youth is on. Like they're just very apprehensive. They over question, and they don't really do or try to hop in the mix. So I think it's just participation.
Honestly, it's crazy that that's a good answer, but that actually is a good answer in today's world, right? Like it is kind of crazy to say that, but honestly, it's a huge thing. Like you said, kids are a lot of kids, I won't say all of them, but they're so scared to be like labeled as a tryhard or an overachiever or whatever. And it's just kind of like, when did that become a bad thing, man? Like, don't be afraid to be that kind of guy. Like, go above and beyond, apply yourself fully, make mistakes, man. That's how you're going to learn. Try your best. So
singing my music.
Yeah, there we go. Well, and that's part of why I wanted to have you on, man. I was listening to you like a couple episodes back on my podcast. I had Jake on, and he recommended that I try and get you on. He thought you had some cool things to say, and I listened to the podcast that you did with Jake way back whenever it came out, and I went and re-listened to it after he recommended you, and I dug it, man. I loved a lot of the things you're saying, and that's kind of why I wanted to get you on. So why don't we start to unpack some of the things that you were saying that I thought were cool, and in no particular order. I guess the first thing was you really like talking about the intellectual expression versus the strength expression. I thought that was like a cool way to look at things. One that if we could kind of get a little more specific with what we mean by that, I think athletes would really benefit from hearing you talk about that, especially the youth athletes. So when you were talking about intellectual versus strength expression, do you want to explain kind of what you meant, and then how you think this intellectual expression is really going to help athletes thrive in game scenarios?
Yeah. Intellectual expression is the ability to just, and if I had to surmise it briefly, it would be the ability to speak up. the ability to read a room and the ability to clearly convey whatever it is you're trying to get across. And that can be in life, and that can also be more of a nuanced thing once we start looking at the game, the game we play, or the sport we play, or the training we participate in. So if I'm trying to clearly get a point across in let's say football, basketball, or some type of agility situation, that means I'm being very specific to my teammates. I'm speaking up. I'm not gonna be mad at a missed opportunity for me to speak up. That if a play does go bust, then I go into the locker room and I'm like, yeah, man, he was fucking up on. Is that I was cursing on your?
Oh, thumbs up, man. We don't censor things over here. Let it rip.
He was, and like we just start, and that's where all the gossip and the drama comes once we start holding things in and not speaking up and not saying things. And the other side of intellectual expression is being able to take in your perception, be very analytical, and just dance and mingle with the strength of expression by the way you apply it. So it's like I can't do what a 155-pound guy does. Like I can fathom what he does, but I can't do what he does. So the closest possible thing I can do is give him a list of KPIs and say, okay, this is what we're looking for. I don't care what it looks like on you. You have the majority of them already. Because like nowadays, all kids want to be humongous for some odd reason. I don't know where they got that from. Every kid wants to be fucking massive and steroidal, but they can't even play the sport they play now. They're not even skilled at the level they're at now. You know what I mean? So it's like, where's the intellectual expression to be like, hey, I have to be honest with myself. I'm not good, even with the body weight and the capacity that I have at this moment. Can't even do that. So, but instead they want to flip side and say, you know what, I need 20 pounds because I can't play. Dude. And
yeah. Sorry, it kind of cut out there, but it's like you're going to try and slap on strength and size on top of dysfunction and lack of skill. Like that's not going to solve your problem, right?
Right, not at all. And that's and that's the big root thing behind the strength and skill expression. I had to find a way to. I hate boxes, but I'd rather be in those two boxes all day long than create 15,000 of them and be like, okay, we got to do this today. But because the majority of it is strength expression, intellectual expression. But at the end of the day, they merge in this beautiful cosmic dance.
Yeah, that we call sport, right? And it's great. And so I think that what I love so much about that message there from you, and when I heard you talk about it on Jake's podcast, is it's such a counterintuitive approach for kind of the way things are approached right now in the world, right? Where everyone's thinking in what you kind of said there, we need more strength. Oh, that guy needs to get bigger, or he needs to get stronger, whatever. And you're going intellectual expression. It's the ability to communicate needs, work together, be analytical, think about your own specific skills and how you kind of approach the game from a mental standpoint, rather than just focusing on in this obsession that we have with the physical right now and in the way the world is right now.
Right, because I mean, but I feel like it comes from the conversations, like where and I believe I said this in Jake's podcast too. It's a lot of the stuff we see isn't being fact checked. Like, Instagram fact checks everything now. Nobody's fact checking the videos we see that the pros do. Yeah. Nobody's really being analytical. Like, yeah, just because they can do it, does that mean I need to do it? And I'm talking about it specifically as training. Like, do I need to do that? Like if we dive into what is elite, so we got elite 5-year-olds, we got elite 7-year-olds, we got elite players. Like, I don't, like, where's the disconnect? Like, mm-hmm. Somebody please show me what we're weighing. Because yeah, in some sports we might have 12-year-old prodigy that's playing tennis, because that's an equal playing field. Because you might play a 24-year-old at in the 1, 2, or 3, like 12. It's very possible for a 14-year-old player to go play Nadal at this moment if they had tournaments going on. Like, that's a thing. But if we take stuff like football or basketball, maybe basketball, depending on the humility and the ego of the player, they'll go play a 14-year-old player and actually play them. But how often is that being fact checked? Like, can we actually go in and be like, hey, you know what? We got this prodigy over here. Will you go play him?
Mm-hmm.
Or will he reconsider because his body is his contract?
Yeah. No, it's a good way to look at it, and I like the way you kind of think about things. You're kind of taking it a layer deeper in today's society and the way things are, especially like you said on social media. We're just taking everything at the surface and accepting it as true, and that's why I think I like talking to people that are trying to really cut through all the bullshit that is spewed out through those mediums, and really think about what's actually going on, what's actually happening here.
It's needed. We need these conversations more than ever.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And like you were saying there too, like people are seeing professional athletes do X, Y, or Z on social media, and now all of a sudden they think that's what they're supposed to be doing. But the thing that's so hilarious about it is that elite level athlete that's doing that, for the most part, probably doesn't need to be doing that drill either, right? Like, just because someone's an elite level athlete or a professional level athlete doesn't mean that the training that they're doing is actually sensible, right? A lot of those guys are just doing ridiculously stupid things, and they're successful in spite of that because they're just genetic freaks. My grandma could train them and they would get elite level results because they're born with it. So now everyone, guys like me who aren't naturally talented, it doesn't matter if I do that stupid drill, I'm not going to get better because I just don't have the genetics to be at that level.
Right, but I mean, if you have the work ethic, you can be at that level.
Yeah.
Because I always used to say, half of the guys I grew up with, or half of the guys that I know from this area, that should be in the league or should be playing or doing nefarious things. Like, they went down the wrong path, and half the guys that ended up in the league ended up because they weren't really playing Johnny Badass.
Yeah.
Some might have got there because they were Johnny Badass themselves, but the majority, we know that's not the case. You can go to a basketball a center you go to Rucker Park in New York, and you'll find some people that'll give anybody in the league the run for their money.
Yeah. But it's the decisions that kind of led them there, right? Like you just said. And I guess what I was trying to say there is for me, like, yeah, I do believe if I do things the right way and work hard, I could really achieve whatever it is, right? But that takes that, like you said, that takes that humility to say, okay, well, where am I at currently? And then what are the things that I'm going to need to do to get there? Not just obsessing with what people that are already there are doing. I need to understand that there's a process there, and that I need to take where I'm at now objectively, and then, do what I need to do to try and take that next step. And then again, take that next step. And then eventually I can get wherever I want. But it is a process there, right?
Right. And speaking of the process, like I just had a great conversation a couple minutes ago about you talking about, like, we both talk about how your grandmother could go train them and they'll get amazing results, right?
Yeah.
If we look at, like, high school football, all these trainers that are training these high school football athletes, or just athletes in general, what are they doing nowadays? Like, if you break it down to the bare minimum root of what every trainer is all doing now, because it's a huge trend. It's agility work, like it's play, it's flow, it's, oh my God, let's have a good time, like, let's move around. And to me, it's like, how did we miss the mark by this much? Like, and you have to go back to the roots. Like, it's the same thing. I don't care what LeBron or James Harden does right now. I want to know what they were doing when they were kids. So we go back and we look at elementary school. Like, if we have to blame anybody, it'd be whoever set the ideologies in motion, and the way we think, and what we think is common, and what we think is right and all proper and good to do, which is elementary school and middle school. Like, you always hear these notions if you have a 1-year-old or a 6-year-old, or even your husband or your wife. you might say, well, they're not ready for that just yet. Well, they're not ready for that just yet. But at the end of the day, if we get on, if we put a pair of parallettes on the ground, and a middle schooler, kindergarten kid could easily do a handstand, no problem, not even think about it. You take a regular adult, moderate athlete, they're having trouble. They might fuck their shoulder up. Like, so it's like we really have to go back and change the whole way. Like, nobody's ever really ready. We're prepared. We're at least a little adaptable, but we're not ready. So it's like the whole base has to be changed, because now we got 4 years. If you got a high school kid, you got 4 years to work with him. Mm-hmm. If you're in a school, or then if you're in college, you got 4 years to work with this guy. Technically, you only got really 1 or 2, because you're trying to produce. You want production. If the guy can't produce, we don't want it. We really don't want to see it. Like, we'll figure out a way to get him out of our way to go work with everybody else.
Yeah.
And I used to be like, man, that's a terrible game. But no, it's the game we play. It's the game we all signed up for. So at the end of the day, we can help Johnny, who's terrible, and who's this and who's that. But it's like, I now have to give Johnny a handbook that he has to go study every night, because he can't compete with everybody else, because I'm not going to stop training everybody else. Like, I train them to say, hey, John, like, I understand you missed these very important parts of growth, but hey, like, we're going to work. We're going to do what we need to do. We're going to realize that that's in the past, but I need you to do this homework every single day, plus the stuff we do, and we should see some improvement. But don't expect to come out looking like the best guy unless you just really put in the work. But I'd say give it 2-3 years. There's no rush. We're making it seem like there's this huge rush to throw 90 or to do everything we need to do. There's no rush.
Yeah. Well, and it's that, I almost want to boil it back to that, like that instant gratification kind of society that we live in, right? Like, if I have a question nowadays, I just pull my phone out and I Google it. Whereas, my dad, when he was a kid, if he had a question, he had to get an encyclopedia and he had to search through it. So I think there's just like this obsession with having everything right then and there, and people lack that patience, and they think that is, the same kind of thought process they should apply to skill development or, developing as an athlete or whatever. But like you said, that's a terrible strategy, and it's one that's going to set you up for frustration and failure, because it's a long-term play, and it has to be.
Exactly.
Well, the one other thing that when we're talking about this whole idea of the process of skill development and everything, the one thing that I thought was really cool that you were talking about on Jake's podcast was your sheets. And you were talking about how you've got these different quadrants and everyone gets a new sheet every 3 weeks. Do you want to expand on that? That's something that I thought was really cool. And I'd love to hear your take on it and find ways where I can kind of try and steal some ideas from you there.
Yeah, the sheets are, the idea behind it was like, everyone's lacking at something. But if I drone on about something you're not good at, and if you're not already built for me to be droning on about it, then you're just going to you're gonna regress, and then you might regress to the point where you don't even want to be around me. So you're definitely not gonna be able to take instruction from me. So I was like, I'll just make these sheets. I'll make these sheets up, and I always say, how do you still fuck up and you have the answers? And some will be like, what are you talking about? Like, think about it. You can already tell what a quarterback's about to do before they do it. You can already tell what a DB is about to do before they do it. But it's if you want to trust that gut reaction, that gut instinct, or whatever it is you want to call it. Do you trust it? Like, so in the sheet, it's basically it's a cheat sheet to beat themselves. Don't study it. You might still do fine, because my training is gonna cover everything anyway. But how many professors are gonna come the first day and say, hey, this is everything you need to learn how to do? So in 16 weeks, you can have this all done in a week. How many professors do that?
Yeah.
I think all of them, because we all We all have syllabuses,
You
you
guys
know,
just gonna say, yeah, you get a syllabus at the beginning of the year.
but how many people actually look at it? Like, it's just a thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, how many athletes are going to take advantage of it? That's the true question. So I could put literally the keys of, if I had a conversation with LeBron, I could break that down, upload a video. But the only way they know I had the conversation with LeBron is they'd have to read the sheet.
Yeah.
So it's like the sheet basically broken down into psychology, sociology, a little bit of physics, a little bit of mechanical engineering. Just it's a mix of everything, because that's just the way I look at this world. I look at it, and so I break it down in my weird lens, and once we can start having great conversations, because like right now we really don't know each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's kind of the same thing with an athlete. Like, I don't know them. Like, they might, and depending on what they tell me, how they convey it, and how their emotional state is, like what their idiosyncrasies are, what their little nuances they do, or when they sit next to me, or when they're talking to me, or when they're playing a match, or when they're playing in a game, if they get aggressive, how aggressive do they get? Do they flare up when they get aggressive? When they start talking shit, do they start doing really bad and they don't understand patterns and trends and how things work? And do their muscles get really tight, or do they get relaxed? Like, what happens? So on this sheet, pretty much breaks everything down per athlete. Like, hey, you're a very tense person. Like, you're just tense. So you got to work on one, how to use the tension, because tension is good. Depending on the tension is also bad. It's the twofold. So it's like you have tension to the point where I feel like you're gonna hurt yourself, like, because you don't know how to channel all of this energy, because you're an amazing athlete and you're on the road to somewhere great. But we gotta fix the aura, man. Like, it's all, So on the sheet is breaking everything down like that, and it's giving them an inside look and an inside track to having a great conversation. Because at the end of the day, like, let's say 2-3 months from now, we keep in touch, we keep showing different stuff, and we keep experimenting, and just sharing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna, like, the sheet you have on me is gonna be a lot more detailed, a lot more nuanced, and a lot more straight to the point. We can start cutting out the bullshit that I know you don't want to hear, and I don't want to hear. So it's like, coach finally understands that I don't like serving there, so I'm just not gonna serve there. But then at a certain point in time, they're gonna realize that they needed to learn how to serve there, but they didn't really understand why I took it off their personal training plan and kept it on my team itinerary, because they get exposed. And once you get exposed, it's like, okay, now I know what questions to ask when and where. Hey, can you put that back on there? Mm-hmm. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? So it's like, if I give you a full meal, of course you'll eat it. But even if I walk away, you might say you ate it. You might nibble on it. You might just take the crumbs and leave. But if I give you a crumb, if I give a person just a little tiny inkling of a crumb, just a taste, how many people are actually going to come back for all the information? How many people are going to actually be like, you know what? Where's the rest of the meal? Or they just be like, no, I'm good. Some will ask. Some will ask, be like, where's the meal? And some will go find it. And so that's basically really like breaking it down, like, who's going to go find that meal? Who's hungry enough to get a little bit of information and be like, you know what, I want it all. So are they going to come and ask me? Or are they going to go study, figure out how I understand things, or they create their own system of understanding, and then they come and talk to me? Because now we can match intellect. So I'm not talking at them, I'm talking to them, I'm talking with them. We're conversing.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Like you said, it's like a framework to essentially get them to do the requisite work, like you said, so that you can actually get on the same page with them and have this like intellectual kind of build that intellectual expression piece into them, right? Just by the framework that you've created.
Like a great friendship.
There you go. So with that, like, I'm just curious. So do they have some autonomy with that sheet as well? So they have sections of it that they're kind of responsible for coming up with on their own. And then they have some areas where it's a little more directed from you as the coach.
I mean, from that aspect, no, because it's their life. Like, so I just, whatever I write is just notes. It's notes pertaining to them or general topics. So the rest of it's their life. Like, if they want to do it, they want to do it. I kind of stopped the whole harping on things. I removed that all the way from my repertoire. The only athletes I harp on are the athletes who I know want it, need it, and they're going to utilize it. Everyone else, nope. Might take 2 or 3 words to you. And like some stuff you have to earn. Like, this is a very over-accommodated society, one, and especially in training. That's why we see all these weird injuries now that we never saw before. Like, how the hell did that happen? And it's always because of the over-accommodation. Like, sometimes we don't need constraints to go run. Sometimes we just need, to go sprint or to go run. Sometimes we need to just go run. Like, put the dasher away, put the free lap away, put the vest away, go run. Like, fuck the metrics, go run, go sprint. Let's get a clipboard. Go sprint. Just clear your head and then come back to it. And now we're moving. Like, at some point you got to remove, you got to add it back. You got to remove, you got to add it back. Like, some athletes don't run well with any apparatus. It's kind of like white coat saying you're going to the doctor. Like, some aren't going to do well at all. And then some aren't going to practice well. But then they show up to the game, do amazing.
Yeah. Well, and then with that example too, right? You could almost use it as a tool. You can say, okay, so when we're timing, everything crumbles, right? So what do you think the underlying issue is? I don't know. And then you have a conversation. Okay, so psychologically, when the stakes are high, there's something about that you can't, within yourself rise up to that occasion. So we're going to remove that for a while, but I want you to work on this psychological piece, and eventually we're going to bring it back in. And we're going to retest you to see how do you respond in this new scenario. And it's like that kind of stress indoctrination process, but it's you're coaching them through that, and you're talking with them through it, and you're allowing them to have some autonomy in that process.
Exactly.
And that's just one specific example based off kind of something that you just said there. But I totally agree. And like you said, like, my stance on this stuff is always like, I'm trying to do my best to communicate. Like, there's no one way to get results. There's no one way to go about something, right? Like, people get so obsessed with these new fancy technology or this new training approach, or, everyone's so obsessed with the perception action and all this stuff right now. But it's like, these are all just tools in a toolbox, right? And everybody is unique. Every situation is unique. We're all our own individuals. So let's figure out which of these tools can we best leverage for the scenario that we have right now, and not just think it's like this one size fits all. Like, everyone needs to be sprinting with the 1080. Everyone needs GPS data, and we need to know heart rate variability every morning. It's like, oh, come on, man. Like, use your head. They're tools in a toolbox. Figure out what you need for this scenario and choose those ones. Don't just overcomplicate things because it's marketable.
Exactly. But that's not the society we live in. So at some point you got to, like, another good book, Not Everything for Sale. Not Everything Should Be for Sale. It's a really good book. Because it's true, and it really goes deep into the bowels of this society and societies prior.
I'm definitely I'll check that out for sure. It's actually like, it's one of the, I actually had a great conversation kind of around this topic with one of my athletes that I'm working with right now yesterday, where, he always is asking questions. He's always researching stuff on his own and seeing what other people are doing. And he's always asking questions. And I love that, right? Because he's genuinely curious. So I'll have long conversations with him. If he has questions, like, let's have some dialogue. So he's like, why is this person doing this? And why do these people say this? And, why are these coaches over here using this tactic? And it's like, well, what do you think the underlying, underlying foundation of all these things are. And he's, I don't really know, because they're all conflicting, but they're also like strongly opinionated and whatever. It's like, it's marketable, right? Like this guy over here, he's talking about this stuff because it's marketable. So he uses these fancy explanations or these names or whatever, and makes you think that that's what you need. And so it actually was a really good conversation. But like you said, people are trying to sell stuff, and that's probably one of the reasons why maybe I don't do as good as I do, because I like to have more open conversations and not just try and pretend that I have all the answers to everything. It's like you said, it's this process. Like, let's dive in, let's figure out where you're actually at, because you know, me just throwing 50 pounds on your back squat does nothing but throws 50 pounds on your back squat. So let's figure out what's actually appropriate for where you're at, where you're trying to go, and then we'll talk about what the plan is moving forward.
Exactly. Like, yeah, it's all about the individualization without over customization.
Yeah. And without coddling, right? Like without saying, you know, you're special and that's why you're getting this. It's like, well, you're, like you said earlier, it's your life. You need to be in charge of this stuff. I'm just going to merely be over here saying, hey, you know, I have education and experience in this sector. Why don't you just kind of let me shepherd this process for you? But I'm not doing the work for you. You have to have that level of ownership yourself.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
With one caveat.
What's that?
At some point throughout in the beginning of my entire process, I do break down the game. I break everything down. It's like this long onboarding process and you probably heard me say the word emotion and behavior and talk with Jake probably a million times. But even Jake puts me in a box. I hate being put in boxes. It's either, oh, he's a perception action guy, he creates environments, or he's emotion. The main reason I talk about all those things is because at the end of the day, you wrap all those things up and you get one common denominator: intelligence. If you look at old papers by Yale professors when they did studies on intelligence, it was just the ability to adapt per environment. So if me being Brett, cannot maneuver even a foot away from my house or a foot on the field or on the court without getting emotional, without being belligerent, without having to say something to everything that's being said, without making a snarky comment, without just shutting up and working. If I can't just shut up and work, or if I have to say something, like everything has to be said, then obviously there's an issue, something deeper than what we would typically see. But most coaches would be like, well, you know what, that's he's just immature. You know, it's probably trauma. You know, there's probably some underlying trauma there. So that's why I really dive into the realm of emotion, behavior, and really just looking at the brain, because these things aren't being touched on at all. And when they are being touched on, it's just, you know, toughen up. Well, no, like, give them some coping strategies, send them to a doctor, and let him just talk. And if he needs to talk to you, allow that to happen. Set up a time if you can't be in the middle of practice. Like, and that's just one thing I always want to make sure that's conveyed. Like, it's not, to me, like, emotion is probably like, you actually come to a training session that I have, it's just a grind. Like, it's hard knocks because they're ready to go. Like, they don't need the, hey, like, you look sad today. It's none of that. Like, it's, hey, you're on the court, we're working. You're off the court, we cut talk. But if you're stepping on, we're good to go. Like, you know, it's just one of those things.
I love it. Well, I think maybe at this point it'd be a nice little segue into another one of the things that I really loved you talking about is athletes and egos, and you know, how they're letting that affect their performance. I thought you kind of did a really good job on tackling that issue specifically, which is a huge issue. And the best part is, before we get into that, a lot of the things that we're talking about today, like, I can relate to, because at some point or another, like, I've been in a lot of these traps that we just talked about, both as an athlete, as a coach, but, you know, in my pursuits of continually improving, like, I'm starting to ask myself these different questions. And that's why I think I resonated with where you're coming from, or how you're coming at things on such a deep level, because that's kind of where I'm getting to now. And it's taken me a little bit longer, but this is how I'm starting to see things over the last, 2 years. So little random tangent there, but athletes and egos, you want to let us know your thoughts on that and kind of how you're seeing that negatively impact performance and development.
Yeah, it's it all ties back in. If egos, like, you got to be checked at the door. That's trauma at some point too. It's like, it's a lack of composure. It's a lack of discipline. Somewhere throughout the line. I'm a great example. Like, a lot of people think I'm very cocky, just because I have the, if I know what I'm talking about, I'm going to have this air of, this chutzpah about me. Just this, he knows what he's doing. But and it's a lot of that that Icarus and hubris debate. Icarus flew too high. Hubris, he didn't know really how to be humility. He didn't have humility, right? So we have to find these times to really create a space without creating a space. It's already built in. Like, so if we create a situation or a drill or environment, it's checking that athlete's ego. Like, so they're the best guy on the team. So of course they're not getting any comp. So of course they're going to start being hyperinflated, especially if they're getting enforced the wrong way. So if they're getting hyperinflated and they're the best guy on the team and they're not training against anybody else but the best guy, but someone right under them, I guess me as a coach, I got to go find somebody that's better than him, or I have to start competing against him, or I have to start handicapping him.
Yeah.
Right. So when we look at egos and stuff like that, it's all about it's all about making sure they understand that you make a mistake. Okay, that's cool. You made a mistake. Very cool. But then as soon as somebody else makes a mistake and they start opening their mouth, okay, so how would you feel if I started? I don't know. So you wait until they make a mistake and you hop up on them. It's my first mistake. Da, 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 da. So, and all my sessions are recorded. So I'm really watching. I'm watching everything. I'm watching all the nuances, the little things. So I'll go tell somebody else a scouting report on that athlete. Hey, do this, do that. Yeah, that's it. Don't even play him. Like, he can't move with this. So now he becomes one of the best players, one of the worst players. Just that fast. Just because I give him everything he does not want. Because every opponent you ever face will give them something, will show you everything they don't want immediately. If not immediately, at some point throughout the game. And if you have an opportunity to watch warm-ups or whatever you want to call it, the before match prep or whatever, or dynamic, they show you what they like and what they don't like, especially if the coach is allowing autonomy. Even if the coach isn't allowing autonomy, you'll see how many people actually do the stretches before football games, before basketball games. Like, what do they do? What do they like to focus on? Okay, this guy does a really deep hip flexor lunge. He doesn't even go near his adductors. Ooh, okay. We can open him up a little bit. Let's get his feet planted in the ground. Let's see what happens. So now it's taking in these various things that you're seeing, and it's like, okay, let's check his ego at the door. So, and it goes right back to this ties in well with the sheets. This ties in well with the last thing we talked about as far as emotion and on the caveat. Like, it's just about how well you see the parallel. To me, that's all it's about. Like, so when I see a kid who's hyper cocky, he probably just wants to talk. Like, he probably has no one to talk to. He needs to get vent. Probably goes home and or he or she has everything they ever wanted, and they just have not been challenged to that point, or they just cocky sons of bitches, which is like, you could run the gamut. Could be a cycle, but sometimes you don't know until the case is in front of you. So I can just speak in really these general terms until the cows come home, and to me, it's always about the conversation with the athlete, and then really just diving in from there.
Yeah, man, I love it. I love it. I love the viewpoint that you're kind of applying on all this stuff. And I think, like you said, the target audience for most of these episodes is the high school athletes that I train and other high school athletes and university athletes. So I think they're all messages that people need to hear, and questions that they need to start asking themselves as well, right? Like, do they have that humility to kind of ask these questions and really explore the answers? So that takes some it takes setting your ego aside, that's for sure. So the one question I have now, and this is less of a, I guess, more of a specific question to you and how you run your business, and it's just popping up to me. Like, it just sounds like the way that you are working with these athletes is like extremely personal, where all your sessions are recorded. You're really breaking down everything for their sport, the way that they play, and that kind of stuff. Like, are you working with a wide number of athletes, or is it a little more focused? Like, how do you kind of scale that process that you have right now, and how do you kind of take that and apply that in your business, just from a curiosity standpoint?
Uh, it varies. A couple years ago, I was working with a lot of teams, so that was a huge way for me to. Well, I'll backtrack. If you listen to some like other podcasts, I always mention like I've been training since I was 10, and it was always like big groups of athletes, and I just from that just figured out what to do. Like it was always like pick up football games or weird training sessions or basketball, and it's a massive people. So it's like, how do I organize this and that? And just over the years, I've just been able to continuously adapt and change the model, especially with more knowledge coming out, and especially a lot more neurology research coming out, and a lot more psychology research coming out. It's a lot of stuff out there to try and work with and mesh and mold, and especially if you can intermingle that with ecological dynamics. And one way is really just like you have to find a temperature gauge. Who's the coolest athlete as far as composure, and who's the hottest? Those two are always going to be pretty much, and then that middle ground. But those three are always going to pretty much be able to corral, because it's the hothead's either the one who can't keep his mouth shut, or he is really that good. The one in the middle, he can be cool, calm, and collected, and then he can turn up like nobody's business. And that probably sometimes is the leader, or it's the quiet leader that's at the beginning. He's just a cool guy, the cool, calm, and collected individual, young man or grown man, depending on the team. And that's the guy they just like. He's the silent leader. Like everybody wants to be like that guy, but he doesn't speak. He's not going to make his case known, because everyone knows how he moves. He is his movement. Everything he does is above board. He has moral. He has integrity. So it's like it's important to really get the gauge on the team. Like I said, like my goal, even when I'm working with teams, it's like winning is cool. Winning is a byproduct. It's like it's a goal, but it's a byproduct at the end of the day. We focus on the we gotta win, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. That's cool. That's cool. If you do everything right, we can probably triple that. Especially if you just like winning, like you do everything right, you still might lose, yes. But so what? We lost. We lost the game. We're gonna get mad. We're gonna change the whole. We're gonna change the whole program because we lost. A lot of teams do that. They'll change everything because one loss, which is fucking nuts to me. And it's probably because they didn't have a good onboarding process. They didn't have a process to really push the athletes in the beginning. It's about making sure that from jump you stated everything you need to get done, everything you'd like to get done, and then you give them the floor to say, I'm coming here to get this, to get that. Okay. And if things don't really match up, but you guys still got to work, so we found middle ground. But I don't know how many places are actually doing that. It's probably a lot of my way or the highway, or they're saying they're very holistic, and then come down. It's kind of like a recruiting trip. Come down the road, everything changes once shit gets hard.
Yeah, 100%. No, I was just curious on that front because, like I said, it just sounds like people that are working with you are just getting such a above and beyond experience. So I just was curious on how you're going about that. But thank you for
Oh, it's
kind of
tough. I won't even lie. It is tough. That beginning part, it's very hard.
yeah. I was gonna say it sounds very labor intensive. takes a lot of time and energy on your part, but obviously, you can tell just by the way, like you truly believe in that process. And I know from personal experience, even if it's labor intensive, when you truly believe in something, it's a lot easier to get it done. Still a lot of work, still hard, but just really trusting that and knowing that it's the right thing to do, or your intentions are pure, it makes it a little bit easier.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, man, I think you shared a ton of gold there. I really loved it. I love the approach that you're taking. I don't want to sound too I don't know, corny, is that the right word? I don't know, but it's refreshing. You know what I'm saying? Like uh I listen to a ton of podcasts. I've got a dog, so we go for long walks all the time, and I'll throw podcasts, and I've listened to so many podcasts over the last, when did I start listening to podcasts? 2013. So 7 years. 7 years I've been listening to podcasts a few times a week, and I've listened to so many that are just sets and reps, and this is our program, this is the tech we use, this is that. And so it is very refreshing for me to listen to someone talk that's just taking a different approach and thinking about things on a different level, on a, like you said, more of an intellectual level, and thinking more of all the different pieces that are in this puzzle, not just, how much do you bench, bro? How much you squat,
Right.
man? You know what I mean? So I really appreciate you sharing all that kind of stuff. Um, and just, sticking to your guns and doing what you do. Cause I appreciate seeing that from other people. And I was brought up in the more conventional strength and conditioning realm with some of the people that I originally learned from, some of the people that I've mentored under, and that kind of stuff. So it is people that are in your kind of camp that are, and I know you don't like being put in a box, so I will try my best not to do that, but people that are just thinking a little more creatively and a little less conventional. It's good for me because it's really helped me kind of see the other side to that coin.
It's kind of like the funniest thing is I did a podcast with Michael Zwiffel. I don't know if you know who Michael
Yep.
Zwiffel is,
Yep.
with BBA. And I was like, the Russians and the Mid Atlantic are probably laughing at us so much just because we're so wrapped up in the weights. They've like everything that they figured out, we're just now crumbing onto and doing a poor job at that for
Oh
the
yeah,
most part, because they're like,
we're butchering it. We're absolutely butchering it. It's like, listen,
and
definitely guilty on that for my first couple years doing this shit. Dude, honestly, yeah, butchering it. But like I said earlier, it's a freaking tool in the toolbox. You know what I mean? And they understand that.
exactly.
They understand that. And yeah, that's the one thing I've tried to do my best to start, observing kind of how they go about that process, what they're thinking, how they, what actual ratio in their whole kind of like training world, like what small little piece of that pie is actual strength training, right? And it's, for most of us in North America, it's not as big as we want it to be, but like you said, set your ego aside and stop just worrying about pounds on the bar, and think about what's actually going to lead to me being better in my sport, in my performance.
Check the facts, right?
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your takes on some of these things. This is how I got you on the podcast. So I love asking this question, but who's a guest coach or anyone that I should try and get on this show and talk to and try and learn from?
Definitely one of my business partners, Fowler Fitness, Grant Fowler.
Yeah.
That's my guy. And then Jared Burton, another business partner of mine, at Train Efficiently. Those two are Those are my guys. Those are two of the guys in the field that really I'm able to bounce things off of. I'm always creating and in my shed, just building stuff, and they'll like I'll send videos to Jared and Grant. He'll come over and we'll just test some stuff out, and really just we'll really just get in the lab and try some stuff and see what works, see what doesn't. But he's built a name for himself. I mean.
Yeah, I've been following Grant for a while. I listened to the episode. Jake's been a great resource for me in terms of putting me on to some different people. And Grant, I stumbled on through Jake's podcast and been following for a while. But Jared, I haven't checked out yet. So I'll definitely check him out and then reach out to him and see if he wants to chat at some point.
Perfect. Yeah. This was a great talk.
Yeah, man, I really enjoyed it. Is there anything else that you kind of want to say on any of the topics that we talked about that maybe we haven't touched on quite yet?
Let's see. Stress isn't something to be afraid of. Half of the time, we only work to an athlete's threshold, and I'm not just talking about. And I'm talking about within the weight room, within strength expression. We are 95% of us are working towards an athlete's threshold. And a threshold is defined as soon as you feel the minimum sensation or stimulus. And we have probably never went to an athlete's doorstep of his or her threshold, respectively. Not crazy, but respectively. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of threshold intolerant athletes. And when we do get a chance to meet a threshold tolerant athlete, oh my goodness. Like, what? He can what? And we start thinking they're anomalies, but actually they're just, they understand stress, they understand training, and they understand the demands of their sport. They don't have to go and reverse engineering things because they understand the demands of their sport, and they're able to train as hard as hell because they understand the demands. So now it's like, okay, I've taken care of the weight room. Now let's go bust my ass over here. They've paid their dues. They've taken the time, and everyone's dues are different. But I think that's the stress key is one thing I always talk about because people always say I never talk about strength training, but I mean. I am in a way, but you just have to be able to. Well, I did talk about stretching in the beginning and looking at weak points, but not a lot of people are doing that either. So the game is cold if you want to be cold. That's the one thing I'll say.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Awesome, man. Well, if people want to, people that listen to this, they're interested on some of the stuff you're saying. Where are some places they can check you out? Social, website? Do you have any? Like you said earlier, you got some educational products out, some consulting. Like, where can people find you?
Transcending Performance. It's my IG, and you click the there's a link in the bio, and it has all my contacts and my Gumroad where I set my my products and everything, my Vimeo with the podcast and the videos I've been on, and it just has the whole slew of everything from the website to everything.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll do my best to link all of that stuff in the description on YouTube and where I throw this up, and I'll throw this up on Instagram as a IGTV as well. So I'll throw whatever kind of contact info I can find, I'll throw in there for you, man. But I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and share some of your wisdom with myself and anyone that's willing to listen.
Man, it was a pleasure. Thank you.